name is Ron Meyer, and I'm a member of this church, and presently I'm doing an interim ministry in Simi Valley. And it's a part-time position, so I have this week off, and I get to be with you, and it's a great place to be, and I thank you for having me be here. How many have heard a sermon on the Good Samaritan before?
Yeah.
All the clergy that are here, how many have preached on the Good Samaritan before? Okay. All right, so we're going to do something different today. We're going to get some exercise now. Are you ready? I want you to get up, take your chairs, and kind of form a circle into the middle here, because we're going to have a discussion about this and not a sermon about this. So, if you would, please, just right where you are, just kind of turn your chairs in so that we can be kind of in a circle right here and we can have a discussion. People that are out there want to come in just a little bit, and I'll have to speak up, and you'll all have to speak up, and we'll see if we can get this done here. Now this is good, this is good. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my Simi Valley Church. They have a multi-purpose room much like this, and they have a small congregation, smaller than this one, and they're looking at ways of where they can turn their church into a coffee house church. They have a church building that is maybe a little bit smaller than this room, but then the next room next to it is this gigantic kitchen. It's about 75% the size of the sanctuary. And when I went to look at the place, I said, "What is the United Church of Kitchen?" Yes, we do all that. So what we're going to be doing in the summer, we're going to test this out. We're going to be seated in a circle around tables like this, and instead of having worship and social hour, we're going to have social hour and worship at the same time. So people can sit here with their coffee and their donuts and their cookies, and then we'll have worship service. And the sermon will not be a sermon, it will be more of a discussion such as this. So you are an experiment for me to see if I can do this. Thank you. And I knew you were just the great group of people to help me do this. So let's talk about the Good Samaritan, if you would. First of all, let's look at the roles of people who are there. Who are the characters in the story of the Good Samaritan? Who do we have first?
A priest.
A priest, and a Levite, and a Samaritan. What's that?
What's a Levite?
That's one of the leaders, legal leaders of the religious community.
Tribal Levite, right?
Yeah. What? There's another character here.
The victim.
The victim. The victim. Everybody forgets the victim. They all can name these other people, but there's a victim here. How many times in your life have you been a victim? Okay, all right. So really, what you ought to, when you read this story, you ought to identify with that person. Now I'll tell you a little bit about myself. When I grew up in my church when I was about in the 3rd grade, we had back in the 50s, great big Sunday school, youth leaders, Christian, huge. Well, anyway, for a Christian Education Sunday, we acted out parables, and I got to be one of the people that acted out the Good Samaritan, and I got to be the victim.
Did you have to take your clothes off?
No, I didn't have to do that, but I had to get hit and beat and turned around and flipped over and writhed in pain and all that kind of stuff, and I got an award for that. But it was good training, because in high school, my senior year in high school, I was in the musical The Fantastics, and I played Mortimer, the man who died. I don't know if you've ever seen that show, but there's a guy who takes 2 minutes to die. And he writhes and wiggles and pains and goes through contortions in about 2 minutes and gets a lot of laughs. Anyway. So I was prepared to be the victim in my life, so I've had a lot of training. So now I'm sure a lot of you know about victimhood in other ways. I don't want to invade your privacy, but does anybody want to tell me a story about being a victim in your life? Anybody want to offer a story? Yes, sir.
I came home to find my house had been burned down back in the late 70s.
Burned down.
Probably by the landlord. We're not sure.
See?
Arsonists never did call.
But you lost virtually
Everything
everything.
I had.
Everything you
Plus I
had.
swear in my car.
You know? Anybody else want to talk about when they were a victim? Yes, sir.
I've been robbed a couple times, both at home and also in the car and things like that.
So you've been a victim of robbery.
Also, being a man of being a gay man, I've been, accused and yelled at for being the fact that I'm gay and, so verbally assaulted, for lack of a better phrase.
Yes, and I'm sure that that's ongoing. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
While I was in seminary, my best friend, who's a Jesuit priest, and I were walking in the streets of San Francisco and were gay bashed by 5 kids in a car with golf clubs. And the story is so poignant to me because a little old lady came running out of her house with a broom, screaming, "I've called the police." And then she started after these boys with the broom. And she really hadn't called the police, but she yelled that so that the boys would hear it. And so she was my good Samaritan.
You had a Samaritan?
Yeah, she literally saved their lives.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
This is a business thing, but I was fired when I was working for Lockheed Aircraft in Burbank, California in 1954. And that was the day of the McCarthy witch hunt in the State Department. And everybody in the defense industry was very suspect. And probably I was not just as discreet living in my youth as I could have been, but I was let go, and I let go, but they gave me a parallel movement, and I'm specializing in advertising. I was assistant band manager. I trained for this and loved being at Lockheed, and so I was a victim of McCarthyism and the hate.
So are you a real true blue communist right here in our midst here?
There you go.
Accused of that.
Jesus
But-
was a communist.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Well, I'm sorry to hear about that, but I'm glad you found other ways
These
to.
are all learning experiences, you know.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Not personally, but my daughter and then my sons, we would be, the word would be chastised because my daughter is developmentally disabled. And sometimes by adults that you think would know better, and often by children who should know better. And my sons would stick up for their sister. So it is a form of prejudice, which gets better. You know, I'm sorry to say the prejudice that we have where black people think they're being victims, and the police who gave their lives in protecting the citizens, and they are the ultimate Samaritans.
Now, let's look at some other things here. For those of you that have had life experiences, when have you been or been shown mercy by someone? When have you shown mercy or been shown mercy by someone else? Anybody have a story about that? Yes, sir.
Helping a stranded brothers on the side of the road, or when I was a kid, we had that same type of thing where the car broke down and the truck driver came along and helped us get the car back together and got us to the next stop.
Yes, there are stories like yes, ma'am.
The story is like both. I was mugged on the streets of San Francisco, and these 2 kids were pulling me. They took my purse and they were pulling me into this doorway under the cement wall and whatever was going on the other side. This was like 9:30 in the morning, and I'm telling them to take my purse, but they were pulling me. And all of a sudden, there's this big white truck, huge, in the road, and big, tall, blonde guy gets out, and he's all in white, boots, everything. And he says, "What's going on over there?" And the kid with the knife stuck the knife into my side, but then they took off through that doorway with my purse. And the truck driver came over to me and he said, "You're going to be all right." And the police are on their way. And he got back in his truck and drove off, and he became a police car. That's my first angel. My second angel is the story my son just told you. We were in Tennessee. I was headed to a job site. I took them with me as a little vacation. I went to the phone. We were like maybe 30 feet from the next where phones were. So I was phoning the office to tell them I didn't know how I was going to get anywhere. Someone called AAA for me. I get back to the car, and here again, I go past this big truck, but this was a big man of color, and he was fixing the tire and putting the jack and everything back in the car. The kids were safe, and we drove home. That's my other answer.
Let me ask you a different question. How many of you have ever passed by on the other side of the road? You don't have to confess the story, but I'm sure we've all done it. At one time or another, we said, we're not going to get involved. The police are coming, the paramedics are coming. We'll just not complicate our lives or get involved. I'm sure we've all been in it. So this story, this Good Samaritan story, is a contemporary story. And when you study the Bible and you want to know what Scripture is when the story is so poignant that it's contemporary in every age. And this story is contemporary in every age. Now I want to ask you another question. You've been reading the headlines and watching the news all over. Describe a Good Samaritan story from the headlines that you've heard. Can anybody do it? Yes, sir.
When the shootings in Orlando happened, where people were running back into the bar to get their friends out, when they didn't know whether they were safe yet or not, to me was an act of Samaritanism, risking their own lives to make sure that one of their friends, might not see theirs.
Right. Any other stories out of the headlines? Can you describe the Good Samaritan story? Yes, Russ.
I think in line with that, what went on in Dallas, as horrible as it was, we're hearing stories of people who were there at the protest who moved to help the police and to look out for them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
I'm having a problem. I don't think the Good Samaritan story is about doing good for people. I think the story is about people that you don't expect to do good for you doing good. So just the fact that I was helpful to some other white gay man my own age or something like that doesn't count. It's where I'd be helpful to some fundamentalist Christian, say, who had an automobile accident or being robbed or something like that. Or if I saw a fundamentalist church being arsoned, that's a good example for me, I guess. For me to call the cops or go rescue fundamentalists out of the church, that would be a good Samaritan. It's not. I see those giant RVs that say Good Sam Club on them. I see people that have like a $60,000 purchase of this thing that they go around to national parks with. And the Good Sam Club, I guess, is where they help other people that have $60,000 RVs.
Yeah.
And that's not at all what the story's about. And the topic's been kind of corrupted to mean be nice to people, and it's not. It's about people you don't like being nice to.
I think you make a really good point. When we talk about the Samaritan, we now talk about there are Samaritan centers, there's Samaritan hospitals, there's Samaritan all sorts. We think Samaritans are, normal, regular folk, right? Good people. In Jesus' time, he's telling the story of the Samaritan because the Samaritan was who?
An outcast.
An outcast. People that didn't have no account, no rights, no recognition. They were oppressed, they were persecuted. The Samaritans were the ones on the outside. And you're right. When you have people on the outside that are helping the people on the inside, that's the Samaritan story. But I don't want to give up the idea of doing good, though, because the Samaritan did good. And when we see ourselves, there are many people in this community here, in the Bloom in the Desert community, that know what it is to be on the outside of society, to know what it is to be separated, to be diminished, to be persecuted, to be, oppressed in one way or another. There are many people here that have many stories about that all their life long. You know what that is. So when the oppressed of this community rise up and help the power community, that's the Samaritan story. So when have we seen that happen in our contemporary stories?
I'm thinking about these inmates that broke out themselves to save the God that
Who's having a heart attack?
Can't hear you.
so the God
Some inmates that say
that was
God.
having a medical event.
Yeah, they broke out of jail to save the guard.
Where was this?
Where was that? I read it, but I don't remember where it was. Do you know?
Some prison.
Yeah, it was a prison somewhere. Yes, sir.
I used to walk my dog in this same park in Washington, D.C. all the time, and I got to know a lot of the homeless people, and they looked forward to playing with my dog and interacting sort of with the dog. Got to know them through over time. And I'd be amazed that so often, there's one guy who rarely speaking, he came up one time and unwrapped in this little bunch of napkins, and he had a chicken, 2 chicken legs that he had gotten from somebody else that he was saving until he saw my dog again. So they were like 4 days old. And he'd been keeping him in his pocket just to have a chance to be able to give it to my dog. And he was like, here, me, have the dog. And I thought, here's this guy that's hungry and on the streets, and he's sitting there.
He's taking care of your dog.
On there. And at the end, when I got my cancer and I had to go tell the people I wasn't going to be around because I was going to be in treatment and they won't see the dog for a while. And they all said, oh, we'll take care of the dog for you. They said, we'll walk in, we'll feed him, we'll build a little house in the park for him. If anything happens to you, we'll take care of him. And then at the very end, when the dog finally had to be put down, the dog was in the park, and all these men came from everywhere to lay their hands and said, give us one chance to heal him. And all these men, the homeless men came and prayed over the dog to try to heal him before I would put the dog in. Just that outpouring from that homeless community affected me so much. That the least of us doing the most for me in those times.
Yes, sir.
When Luke was writing, using the term, quoting, the quote, using the term Samaritan, what ethnic group were these people known as Samaritans? Who were the outcasts?
I don't really have that description. All I know is that they were people living on the same land in the same place, but because they were of certain kind of delineation, they were just outcasts.
Kind of like our homeless population today.
Well, are homeless? There's a list.
The gypsies or?
The gypsies,
Anybody suspect of?
gay, black,
Any
Muslim?
immigrant, Muslim, Mexican, disabled, veterans.
I believe they were Jews, but they didn't believe the right things. They were like some kind of other brand of Christianity that we don't like and that doesn't like us.
Right, yeah, I think you're right. I think that's correct. But nevertheless, they were among the people that lived there, and they were ostracized for one reason or for whatever reason it was. But we know that we have this experience now in our life. And when you read the stories of the young black men that are being shot by police, and you realize that that's been going on forever and ever and ever, it's just that we now know about it because of cell phone videos, that doesn't make it right or wrong at any time. It's wrong whenever you see it and whenever we know about it. But I think one of the lessons that I'd like to bring out here about the Good Samaritan that we don't hear enough of is that we know the story of victimhood. And we know the story of outsiders, of unexpected people who bring mercy and bring care. And that those people, even on the outside, are our neighbors, are our friends, are our brothers and sisters. Even the victim is our friend, our neighbor, our brother, our sister. But one of the questions we need to ask ourselves in this society now is when will we start reducing victimhood? When will we do things in this society where there are fewer victims? And I know that's a difficult question to answer. Not that this is a direct lesson from the Good Samaritan story, but it's a societal lesson from this story. When we look at the Good Samaritans that are required in our land right now, are required in our society right now, we require everybody to come up from wherever they are to care for those who are oppressed and hurt and victimized. But when are we going to be a peaceable nation again? When are we going to have fewer victims? When are we going to be able to say that the Good Samaritan story is an anomaly and not an everyday occurrence in the headlines everywhere we read them? It would be nice, I think, if we could work toward that. When I say it'd be nice, it's time now for the Levites and the priests of our society, the power society, the white privilege society, the people who are likely to pass by on the other side, must realize now that the amount of victims that are in our society are more than this society should be able to have to tolerate. And it comes time for the white privilege, the priests, the Levites, and those in power to say, we are now going to get involved, and we are going to be neighbors to these victims, and now we are going to do something about it. And it means we cannot pass by on the other side anymore. We cannot look the other way and say somebody else will take care of it. We have to write letters. We have to send to protests. We have to contact our Congress and senators. We have to do these things. We have to get involved to get these things changed. If we don't, who's going to be the next victim? And can we tolerate it? Yes, ma'am.
My family had friends that came from, that were German, that came from and were in Germany during World War II. They knew many people that had helped the Jews.
Yes.
And when you can help somebody, when it threatens your life, and when you have such an evil force threatening you, but you extend the hand of fellowship and to protect that person. And I guess that's what we need to do now, but I think we don't, like I personally, truthfully don't know how to do it. I mean, what do? Yeah, I can write a letter. Yeah, I've
But
done
we need to do it. We actually need to do that. We need to influence our leaders. We need to influence those in power.
I think you're right. I wrote letters. I love writing this letter because I wrote it to the president and I copied in everybody. I put CCs to the senator and all the local congressmen and assemblymen.
Great.
And by the way, it was at that time Ronald Reagan, the president, and I got an answer, and he had a person from the state, Dr. Gardapi, contact me, and it was about the living situations that my daughter and other disabled people were in. So I do know from personal experiences that letters make a difference.
But you have to, like you say, put yourself at risk to expose yourself to be on the side of wherever you're writing this letter. And I know that you're all sick and tired of hearing people being shot, including now police. We're sick and tired of it. But if we don't act to change, if the people in power don't act to change it, you're only having the protesters protest and people diminish the protesters. And we only have the fringe people doing it and people diminish those people. Yes, sir.
I think it's important also when we do have politicians that do support you to make sure they know we thank them for that.
Right.
You made a point of contacted Dr. Louise in our two centers about the gun protest. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Yeah,
They tend to hear the opposite of it.
right,
You know, there's a lot of us out here.
right.
On their side.
But see, that's getting involved too, when you can garner their support that way. And that's a wonderful thing. Because there are people that are doing good things, and we need to thank them for doing it. But if you're sick and tired of it all, like I am, yes, sir.
Isn't that also part of the message of the Good Samaritan story, that Jesus is saying, you must do more than love your neighbor, you must act on it?
Exactly. Exactly. That's what the Samaritan did. He acted on it. And he acted on it being an outcast in society. He did what was right anyway. And that's significant. But I want to thank you for being part of this discussion. This was, I hope, helpful to you and hearing some of the stories that are around here. And my hope is that you all will not pass by on the other side. Amen.
Amen.